Hello friends, welcome. Friends, you know that the budget document came out after the budget was announced, that which is of 2025-26. Now, if you look at the budget summary at glance, you will notice that they have captured all the numbers right at the face of this document. You will find that the revenue receipt numbers have slightly increased from the total revenue receipt numbers have slightly increased, and the tax revenue part has increased from 25 lakh crore, which is the revised estimate, 25.56 lakh crores to 28.37 lakh crores. And the non-tax part of the revised estimate was 5.31 lakh crores, has increased to 5.83 lakh crores, right? These together forms 32.2 lakh crores. Now, why I'm emphasizing on this particular point? Because the fiscal deficit number, if you look at the fiscal deficit number, it is now in absolute term lower than the revised estimate of last financial year, which is 15.69 lakh crores was the number for the last financial year, which is FY25, right? So you look at the fiscal deficit number in absolute terms. This number, which is today in absolute term, is 15.68 lakh crores. Now you can see that this number is the shade lower in absolute terms, not in percent of GDP, in absolute term, which is fantastic, right? So now the fiscal deficit has been pegged at 4.4 lakh crores. Now, in order to bring down fiscal deficit to this level, the government of India had to do lot of work. Lot of work means it had to ensure that its revenue receipts do not go down, and the expenditure that it does in terms of revenue as well as capital expenditure, especially the capital expenditure part, also does not go down. Otherwise, what will happen is it will have a spillover impact on the economic growth. Though it wanted to bring the revenue expenditure down, but it prevented the capital expenditure to go down significantly. And therefore, it is important that the income part was not drastically driven down. So before this budget, I actually had an apprehension that government is going to face a lot of problem in able to extract and make the non-tax revenue, which is roughly around 17% of the total revenue received. It is going to struggle to achieve this number, 5.83 lakh crores. Now you may ask why I am basically raising this particular point. The reason I am raising this particular point is you will find it very, very interesting. And I always try to bring facts which are interesting on the table, because general things are all available in the marketplace. People are already analyzing it. Now, when I take you through one of the ministry's budget, you will understand that how this non-tax part of the revenue actually had increased initially because of a spending of a particular line item of a particular ministry. Now, you may be asking a question: why spend of an item of a particular industry is leading to increase in receipt, which is non-tax revenue? Are you not surprised? So let me just show you that this year that ministry is not spending that much amount of money in that line item. Therefore, I thought that this item, non-tax revenue, will be at risk. But somehow the government has been able to bail themselves out. And for that, I'm going to take you through the details of non-tax revenue and map it to that ministry's line items to show you that how in earlier years the spend on a particular item of that ministry was leading to these non-tax revenue numbers bumped up, so that the tax revenue collection can be shown at a higher pedestal. Because the fiscal deficit had to be controlled. You can't basically show a higher fiscal deficit, otherwise people will get scared, right? Our economy is going to people will lose confidence in our economy. So let's go into the details of non-tax revenue, which is pretty important. Tax part we'll talk later, but non-tax revenue is very, very important. It's roughly 17% of the total revenue received. So here is the receipt budget, which gives us the details of non-tax revenue. You will find that non-tax revenue has various components. One is interest received, which is not very high, because if you look at the interest received, it is around 47k crores, right? What was the number of non-tax revenue which we saw? We saw it around 5.83 lakh crores, right? So this particular item, the first item, is not very significant, and it had been maintained in that level, which has got slightly increased, not very much, right? Then comes one important item, which is so important that you will without it, which non-tax revenue part cannot be managed. What is that? Dividend and profits. And this dividend profits, especially coming from Reserve Bank of India. The Reserve Bank of India is giving dividend to the government because of higher profits that it is able to earn because of high interest rates, especially in US and other part of the, because it invests its foreign exchange or the amount of money that it holds in US, and where if you are getting a higher interest rate because the US bond rates were higher, this leads to a higher income. So this year also Reserve Bank of India is going to give a income to the government in terms of profits to the tune of 2.56 lakh crores. So this is very significant. Because of this, the non-tax revenue actually has been able, the government has been able to maintain that non-tax revenue to the level that we see today, and which has been able to drive fiscal deficit numbers lower. So the total interest received on because of dividend profit comes from two places. One is the public sector, and another is Reserve Bank of India. So it is higher than what it was earlier by a number roughly around 50k crores, right? So this number and this number is also high. So together, if you see that, because actually these two numbers added together is this number, so it is around 50k crores, right? Then comes the fiscal services, which is very, very less, so you can ignore it. Now comes the services, all type of services. We have got general services, then we have got social services, then you have got economic services, and then we have got down below railway revenue, which just gets subtracted, netted out, and then the total services is right here down below. And you can see that the total services numbers have actually dipped. You can see that the number has actually dipped from earlier here. Here is where the problem was, and problem is today, why this number has actually dipped. Because the number was for the budget year, budget estimate for FY25 was 1.82 lakh crores, and then revised number is 1.74 lakh crores. Now it is lower by it is lower, which is 1.58 lakh crores. Now why this number was higher in these years, and why it is lower, and how this number was able to keep the non-tax revenue numbers higher so as to have a lower fiscal deficit. It is important to understand that. So for that, I am going to take you through the budget document or the expenditure pattern of Ministry of Department of Telecommunication, DOT's expenditure. Now you will understand what is going on. Now, if you look at DOT's expenditure, this is also following a camel kind of curve. Can you see this? It actually has, you see, if you look at in 2000 FY22, the actual spend was 13.7k crores. Then in 2023, the number went, the revised estimate number was 81k crores. And then in FY24, the number went up to 98k crores. And then in FY25, the revised estimate number is 1.24 lakh crores. And then suddenly the number went down, right? Can you see that? It is went down. So this year, the spend which the Department of Telecommunication is doing is only how much? It is 81k crores, almost at par with what it did revised estimate in FY23. Now you may ask, why Department of Telecommunication is spending less? Why it was spending earlier so high? Though BSNL network is the major component of is the capital inflation in BSNL network. So you will see that as the BSNL investment or the spend was increasing, right? The spend for Department of Telecommunication expenditure is also increasing. It all depends on BSNL. As you see that the BSNL number for FY25 was 83k crores, right? You see 83k crores, and it has slightly dipped. And then this year it is 33.7k crores, and that's why it has brought the number down. So this capital infusion of BSNL actually plays a very, very important role in non-tax revenue. And people will not believe that. Why? Because a large portion of this value, this number, is actually for spectrum. So when the government of India issues spectrum to BSNL, the BSNL gives back the value of the spectrum to the government of India in terms of equity. And that equity is shown by the government of India in terms of non-tax revenue. This is the non-tax revenue, right? You see this non-tax revenue. Now, where is this number captured? Let's look at this number. Then only we will be able to map, right, what is going on. So you look at, when you go to this item, economic services, right, which is a significant part of the non-tax revenue which I showed you. So this is the economic services, total economic services, and in the revised estimate, the number was 1.74 lakh crores. Now it has gone down to 1.58 lakh crores. Now in this line item, one important line item which you will notice is this line item, other communication service. Now other communication service is what? Other communication services is the income that the government of India is drawing from, mainly from the telecom sector. Now here, a major portion of this income comes from license fee, spectrum fee, and auction collection. And this, on top of this, the equity that BSNL is giving to the government, when spectrum is granted to them, the equity that the government of India gets from BSNL is added to this number. And that is why, if you look at this number, suddenly has gone down from 1.23 lakh crores to 82,000 crores. Because the industry revenue is increasing, right? Industry actually is growing. If you look at the telecom industry, the revenues are growing. Therefore, the license fee and the spectrum fee is also going. Deferred payment of auction is still going to be there as it was. There was a moratorium, so there is no impact on that. So if you look at these numbers actually should have remained stable or should be increasing. Why it has dipped here now? Right. So you should get this question. Why the other communication services collections of the government in terms of non-tax revenue has decreased? That is why this number, this total number which I basically was talking to you in the initial stage of non-tax revenue, which we saw in the summary document of 5.83 lakh crores, was at risk. If the government of India was not able to collect huge amount of money from dividend and profits, which it is collecting right now, its non-tax revenue numbers would have dropped because of lack of spending in BSNL, MTNL in terms of notional numbers, which is mainly spectrum, right? So that is what the key point is. So government has been able to bail themselves out on this number because of why? Because the dividend and profits have delivered well. RBI is going to give the government a good amount of dividends, and the public sector is also give good dividends to the government, and that is why this number is much higher than what is the revised estimate. Not much higher, but higher by 50k. And then there are other items in the general services which has bailed the government. If you look at, it all added up. For example, if you see that the administrative services, total administrative services, the collection was, the estimated collection is 26k crores from a revised estimate of 17k crores, right? Then if you go down below, you will find that, so there is nothing here. The total collection, if you add this general services, is from 21k crores has increased to 33k crores. So the government of India is able to make money from general services. Social services numbers have increased from 6,400 crores to 11k crores, right? And economic services number have decreased from, if you see, decreased from 1.74 lakh crores to 1.58 lakh crores, mainly on account of the reason which I told you, other communication service, and government of India has been able to somehow bump up its revenue, and they were able to prevent a sharper dip here. If it was a sharper dip, then the non-tax revenue would have significantly be under risk. So this number has not gone down significantly. And then there is a small amount of grant in it. And if you look at this number, the number actually looks very, very respectable. That has been able to drive our fiscal deficit number to a value which is quite respectable, and we should be quite happy with it, because in absolute term this number is lower than the revised estimate for the last year. So friends, I will not go more deeper in this particular video. I wanted to capture this issue very clearly so that people understand that there are certain things in the budget which are notional in nature, which are both CapEx, which are both in spend as well as captured in earnings, which kind of gives a little bit of how do I say this? it can be called as something which is not real. So that has to be managed in order to ensure that things don't go haywire because of a certain change in numbers in near future, because government doesn't have to give more spectrum to BSNL, and therefore government will not be able to get more equity from BSNL, which they cannot show in non-tax revenue. Tomorrow I will do subsequent video and go in deeper into CapEx spend of the government, how it has changed, how the government of India has been able to make its CapEx spend numbers still higher, and where they have seen dip. And then I'm going to go specifically into ministry, especially the DOT and the Ministry of Information Technology, to understand that which projects the focus of the government of India is. And that will give us a flavor that what kind of projects like AI or Make in India, PLI, where the government of India has focused and where the money is getting poured. Right? So we'll come back with their analysis tomorrow, and I'll end this this video by thanking you for watching till the end. I'll come back with a new video next time. Tomorrow morning I'll do a detailed video on the topic which I just mentioned. Thank you very much.